asleep during dark
All right, hold on. Yo, what's up?
mages.
Yo, Lord, what's going on, man?
Oh, not too much there. What's going on, friend? You want to identify
I just
yourself?
wanted to. Yeah, no, sure, yeah. This is Mick Meng
All right, Mick
from
Ming.
YouTube. Yeah, what's going on?
Yeah, yeah. Like,
Um,
I don't recognize you. Are you an IRC chatter or just a YouTube person?
just YouTube.
All right, cool. Yeah, yeah.
I,
We're
I don't even
mostly
know how to
internet
access
relay chat
IRC.
people. So, yeah, this
Yeah,
shit
yeah.
is all weird to you. Yeah, what's on your mind, man?
No. I wanted to listen. First of all, love the show. I haven't been watching for a very long time, and I don't know if you typically talk about shit like this, but you seem like an intelligent guy. I know you live in New York City, and
Hmm.
you're a teacher, so politically, you probably lean one way. I mean, I would assume that you do, but like I said, you seem like a smart guy, and I know you kind of touch on these
Well,
subjects,
I
but
gotta tell you, like, just to clarify real quick, my political views,
Aztec donate $1. Death to America.
my
yeah,
political views
I
are
don't
like
have a song request for
really
tonight, so
uncategorical.
here's some
Like they
money.
don't fit on one side
Penis
or the other
hump.
for the most part. I'm like a science fiction
oh,
writer.
good.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
shit I
yeah.
care about is
I'm
way
not,
in
I'm
the
not
future.
assuming that. No,
Yeah.
I kind of see that. I see like
Yeah.
little hints of that. So I was wondering where you do align politically. Like, are you like a Trump guy? Do you see yourself more aligned to the left or the right?
No,
Like,
I
how do
don't
you
think
feel
I
about
don't
the
think
issues?
most of the shit that people think is important is important. I really think like so much of the shit that we work on is utterly irrelevant. I'm a survival of the species person. The things that I believe in are I believe. Um, well, here's the thing. Like for before I did this gig, I worked in computers for a long time. And like, what do they say about data? If you have one copy of something, you don't have it. If you have two copies of something, you don't really have it. You need to have some fucking parity in your life for any data that's important. And I think our species is no different. Like, I don't know what we're fucking trying to do, just occupying one planet that could be wiped out in a second by like a fucking gamma ray burst, by a nuclear war, by a global pandemic, by a fucking wayward comet. There are all kinds of things that can annihilate us. And I
Right.
have a deep desire for human life to continue. I don't know why. I mean, obviously, like all life wants to perpetuate itself. All life doesn't want to be extinguished. Um, but yeah, I want us
Life
to
will
still
find a
be
way,
here
right?
in 100
Yeah,
years,
no, and
and that's what's important
that's
to
a
me.
big topic. I'm talking about like the smaller topics, like
Okay, yeah,
immigration, shit like that.
yeah,
And you don't have to talk about it if you
yeah,
don't
yeah.
want to,
Like,
obviously.
politically, I think that let's run down a few different things. I'm a big fan of abortion.
Yeah.
I think abortion
A
should
big
be
fan of
mandatory.
abortion.
Yeah, I think abortion should be almost
I never heard it
mandatory at
put
some
like that.
point. Yeah, yeah.
Well,
No, I think it's
yeah,
one of the
like
if
up
you
to
look at
what
it
point?
like if
Up
you
to
look at
what
it
point?
from
Because I think that's where the
yeah.
debate is.
If you look at it from like an economic standpoint, abortion is like
Yeah,
the most amazing thing that you can possibly fucking do in a lot of different circumstances. It's really, really fantastic. Um, I fall on the side of the people who say, it's a clump of fucking cells. Most of and people are like, oh, you're beating heart and so forth and everything. I'm not a
mm,
believer. I believe that humanity is a learned function, and people who are like sticklers, like, it's a baby that you're killing and so forth. Fuck off. Like I don't
yeah.
remember much from that time. So I'm a big
So
fan of
so
abortion. Let
let me cut
me
you off real quick.
yeah.
So where the debate usually
Mhm.
comes to a standstill is like, at what point do you feel like it's okay to have an abortion?
I really feel like you should be able to abort or dispose of a child up until it's about 18 years
And
old.
you're gonna give me some. Okay,
Yeah,
I knew
like no, no, but really and
you don't
truly,
really believe that. No, you don't.
no, no, no,
All
like
right. I thought we could have a serious
sincerely,
conversation. That's
I
fine.
think. Well, keep in mind.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's hop down in this. The point where a child can fend for itself, like you can just stop feeding the fucking thing and it will get food on its own. That's the point where
Right.
you can't abort it any longer. Because I mean, like, really think about it. You have to. These things are fucking parasites, right? They depend on you for sustenance. You have
Right.
to keep them alive, and the fact that you do keep them alive, a lot of it is just societal obligation and so forth. I think we're a little bit past that, right? I don't think you should have to feed a fucking kid if the kid is like an asshole, right? What if you like birthed out a kid and it came out all fucking retarded or funny looking, or it's always back sassing you or whatever? I don't think you have to feed that child. But anyhow, like, no, really and truly, I don't think that we need any like kind of significant term, like the number of late term abortions that are performed is minuscule. It really, really, almost all of the abortions that you'll see
Well,
that
in
that
your
happen.
state, it's allowed, like up till after birth.
Yeah,
You can
you
kill
can
a
you can
baby
abort at any
after
fucking
birth
time in New York
Yeah.
City. I will tell you that the vast, vast, vast majority of abortions are going to fall into the first trimester for the most part. People make up their minds very quickly. I don't
That
have
doesn't make
any
it okay.
I don't have any particular moral compunction against abortion all the way up until the time where, like, literally, just me personally, if people wanted, if they like are like, I just don't want this fucking baby anymore, and they just throw the thing in a trash compactor, I don't see the problem. Right? I really don't see the problem, and that's
Uh,
where I could never debate like little Ben
you're
Shapiro on this
you're
one.
kidding.
No, I'm not fucking
You're
kidding.
kidding.
I really think that
Well, I hope you are.
yeah, I
I
think,
wonder where
yeah.
you really align, because you're an intelligent guy. Like, I could see that. It's
Yeah, yeah.
apparent.
No. Like,
And I
I
really
want to
wonder
be,
where you
I
align on
want
these
to
political
state
issues.
this
But it's okay. Like,
explicitly. I want to state
yeah.
this explicitly. When you are a baby, when you are a young child, when you're like 2 years old or something, yeah, it's like terrible if that kid dies. But most of the terribleness of that kid dying is the effect that it has on their parents, on their grandparents, on any siblings that they might have or whatever. In terms of like being a child, like say that you die when you're 2 years old, that's fucking great. What a win. You know what I mean? What an epic win. Everything that happened to you so far in your life was amazing. Like the life of
Yeah.
a 2-year-old is fucking amazing. By the way, like all the time that you spent in the womb was just fucking perfect. And if you had gotten stabbed with a fucking Q-tip or sucked into like a vacuum hose or something like that after 3 or 4 months like that, great. Good luck in the next reincarnation. You didn't have to suffer. You didn't have to do anything fucking difficult that entire time. You didn't contribute anything. You won the fucking lottery. And it's those of us that make it through childhood and adolescence and so forth. We're the ones that really get to fucking suffer. You know what I mean?
If
And
you
that,
had like a really great childhood, and what if you were
I had an amazing
between 0
childhood,
and
right?
2 years old? No, I'm just saying, like, hypothetically. What if a person had a great childhood and they didn't have any real struggles? They were coddled their entire lives.
Hmm.
And what if a baby from 0 to 2 had like a really difficult life? What if they were born like a crack mother and a crack dad?
And we can look at that. We can look at Dark Mage right here. We've got an example for how that turns out there.
I always hear his name. I don't know who the fuck that is, but
Oh, you'll find out. He'll be a star
cracking.
someday.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyhow, so let's hop into this right here.
Where I'm going with it is that you're saying that if you have a struggle, then you've essentially you've proven yourself with the right to live. But if you haven't had a struggle, then it's okay for you to die because you die without struggle. So, what's the harm in that, right?
Well,
If I understand
I think you're misstating my point a little bit there. One, I do believe that humanity is a learned function, right? That you don't start off as a human. It's something that you pick up over the way. You have to be socialized and so forth. And if we take a fucking child and have it raised by wolves and so forth, you will see that it lacks some of the basic, all the children that we've found that have been raised by wolves or that have grown up on their own in wilderness, they never fully adapt to society because they're past the point where they can learn to be a human being. What I'm talking about there, though, is not
a human being to adapt to society. It just makes you a functioning human being within society, right?
Well, within society, but we're all in societies. That's
human.
These are the human beings that we're concerned about. We care about
we're not
people
all
who
necessarily.
are part of society. We don't give a fuck about people who are not part of society. But what I'm saying there, my point there, is not about like the value of the individual or the value of their suffering and so forth. I'm talking about all the suffering that they miss out on because they're dead, right? And in an unlimited void of perfect sleep where nothing hurts, right? Where there is no compulsion, where they just don't have to do anything because they don't exist, right? But like, I really feel that people understate the value of non-existence, right? Existence, life is suffering.
There's a big question too. Like, what do you think happens after you die? Do you think you just
there's nothing
cease to exist?
No, I literally died on the air in LRH season 2, episode 6. I took a massive overdose of a drug called succinalcanine on the air.
What year
It's
was
a
this?
horse tranquilizer, and I literally died on the air. I died and had to be resuscitated, right? I spent like a significant
Seriously?
amount of time dead. I went through the whole experience. I came back to life. I want to tell you, there is fucking nothing there. It is a void without
How long were
light,
you dead?
without sound, or without heat. I'm not sure exactly the duration,
Well, it was
because
on
I had
the
been
air.
dead for
You
some
must
time when they
know
found me.
the exact duration, no?
Say that again? No, I don't know the exact duration because I died, and then people had sent
On
the
the
police
air.
to my location, right?
Yeah.
So I don't
It
know
was all
how long
live,
I was
right?
dead for before they resuscitated me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, how long do you think? Like, what would you speculate?
Like half
Just
an hour.
knowing, like, here, like,
Well,
realistically, half an
like you
hour?
would be
Bullshit.
fucking brain dead after about I think 7 or 8 minutes. You start getting into brain dead territory, and I don't, just from talking to me right now, I think I'm not quite brain dead at this point. So probably like 3 or 4 minutes dead. But here's the thing about dying that a lot of people don't know is that as you're dying,
Well,
different parts of your brain start shutting down. Let me finish this point. As you're dying, different
yep.
parts of your brain start shutting down. One of the first things to go is your temporal perception. And if you've ever done like a boatload of acid, you know what this is all about. When the unit that processes time starts breaking down, that's where you start to experience seconds as like a subjective infinity, because the part of your brain that's able to tell time is fucking breaking down, and you're experiencing all these sensations for what seems like a fucking eternity. And that's what hell really is. It's being caught in those final seconds of agony, and you no longer have the ability to process time. So it just seems like it goes on fucking forever. But yeah, I'm proud to announce that there is no afterlife. There is no God. There's only endless nothing, and it's
hell
wonderful.
is the absence of God.
Say that again.
Hell is the absence of God.
Okay.
So it's not being connected after you die, not being connected to everybody and everything, and this ultimate consciousness.
Okay, that's a wonderful fairy
And-
tale, and I highly encourage you to
Well-
die at some point and really experience what it's all
No,
about.
I will. Yeah, at some
right?
point, right.
Because I've done
Well,
enough.
I mean, just because you died for a little bit doesn't
Mhm.
mean that you experienced death. You know, you didn't experience the afterlife. Like your brain started shutting down, but you didn't really die. Like, what is death really? Like, what is death categorized as? When your brain function stops and all function within your body stops? That
Right,
clearly
right,
didn't
right.
happen.
Yeah, all that shit stops happening, and then you have no perception whatsoever. There's only darkness, and there's not even cold, because cold
but
is
did you
something that
die?
you can sense. I absolutely died. Yeah.
I mean, partially dead. Not all
No,
dead.
100%
There's a big
fucking
difference
dead.
between all dead and
Listen,
mostly
buddy,
dead.
I was there. Yeah, I can tell you the difference between dead and alive. Anyhow.
Anyhow, so back to the issues. Like, hang up on me at any point. By the way, if I
No, we got nothing else going on, and this is interesting to me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I didn't think there was anything going on. So, immigration. I'm interested in like your perspective on that.
Okay.
Like, how do you
Yeah.
feel
Like,
about
so
open
this is
borders
another
or-
thing where I have like a weird and unique life experience and so forth. So I will tell you that I'm not a big fan of nationalism. I'm not a huge fan of like, oh, we have all these different cultures and they're super valuable and so forth. I think humanity would be a lot better off if all of us could just speak a common language, right? And maybe that language is Chinese, because there's like a billion fucking Chinese
English is the
people,
most common language,
you
right?
know. But I'm a big fan of what you would call standards, because if you really think about it, what's the value of having people on Earth speaking 240 different fucking languages, like split up in this like Tower of Babel thing? It's fucking garbage, right? What it really means is that we have all these different divides. People can't travel freely. People can't understand what's going on. I honestly think that this is the greatest failing of America at the height of their military power, that they neglected to impose a hegemony over the whole of the earth. I've been really lazy about that whole conquering the world thing. Hegemony is basically having political control over the entirety of something. Yeah, we really have not done a good job of that right there. In terms of immigration
Building
to the
an
United
empire.
States, I have like a somewhat different view, and I've espoused this a bunch of times on the show. I'm a big fan of immigration, people coming to the United
L0
States.
practices Jewish nihilism.
I'm a big fan of like because I've met a lot of recent immigrants to the United States. I've met a lot of illegal immigrants, and by and large, they are really hard workers. They really want to do well for their families. It's a good thing that we have these people here because they had to try really fucking hard to get here, and it's important to them. But I think there are a few things that are important. I'm a believer in the power of a kind of cultural homogeneity in a few different ways. Like people say, like diversity is our strength and so forth in some ways, but diversity is definitely not your strength when you come to language. Diversity is a huge handicap when you have many different languages because those people can't reasonably communicate with each other outside of a small subset of elitist bilingual and multilingual and trilingual and it really puts a lot of power into the hands of people who can speak multiple different languages. There's no reason to have all these different sort of sets, like the different programming language, different ways of going. So I think if I really think that it is smart for a country to have a national language, and America does not have one. Like we don't
Right.
make an effort to stick
No, we
to
don't.
one particular language. And I
It's been
think
proposed many times,
it's been
but it never
proposed many
passes.
times, and people are like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's racist" and so forth. But just from an
Right.
efficiency perspective, I think if you come here and want to emigrate here, then you need to have a relatively fluent grasp of the English language. The other part of it, like, what about all the people that are here illegally, right? What are we going to do with these people? For the longest time, we had an idea of what to do with people who wanted to come to America, but who could not afford to come here by their own means. It was called indentured servitude. It was a great system, and it worked fantastically, where essentially people would have to serve as servants for 7 years, and then they would gain their freedom and become part of society at large and become citizens. We did this with like some convicts and so forth. I played Sid Meier's Colonization back in the
When
day.
was this, man? I don't remember that at all.
So this was a very, very common very common practice for people who wanted to come to America, specifically from England and a few other European countries where they could not afford the passage, which was relatively expensive. So people
What year?
would pay. God, this is relatively early in before the establishment of the United States. So in the period before, like
Like
between.
the 1600s?
Yeah, we're talking about between Roanoke and between like 76. I don't think indentured servitude was really a thing much after that, but I might be wrong there. So the point of this is basically if you want to be, and I have a belief in something called earned citizenship, the same way that I believe that humanity is earned. I think that if you want to be a citizen of the country, and I define citizenship as the ability to vote and have a real political say in what goes on in the country, I think that it needs to be earned through a period of either military or civil service. And let me elaborate on that right there. I really think that if you want to have a say in what the country's doing, if you want to be able to vote, if you want to control like how budgeting is working, I think you need to have some skin in the game. I think you need to have put in some fucking time, whether you served in the military or whether you were in like the equivalent of the Peace Corps or you spent 3 or 4 years of your life building highways or whatever. But yeah, I do believe, and this is a very like Heinlein viewpoint, where enfranchisement requires service. And so I think the same thing for all the illegal immigrants that are here and so forth. I think we should absolutely have a path to citizenship. And I think all of us should be profiting off of it. We should be making some money off of these people that want to come here. We should be clapping them into military service, having them do all kinds of infrastructure work and shit. Like, I think that's the solution, this whole problem. And if your requirements to have any kind of reasonable access to social problems and so forth have that stringent requirement, like that you have to speak solid English, you have to have put in your 4 years or 3 years or whatever makes reasonable sense, then swiftly we don't have a problem anymore. We don't even need a fucking border if those requirements are there. And if everybody is on the same page, they're like, if all of us sort of collectively believed, like, yeah, everybody who wants to be here has to contribute meaningfully, and if we,
I don't mean to cut you, but can you back up a little bit? You said that there doesn't need to be a border if what happens? If everybody speaks English?
Yeah, like if our requirements to draw from like any significant social programs, if our requirements are you have to contribute in that way, and that we will ostracize anybody who does not meet those requirements, like ostracize to the point of.
How do you find them, Logan? Like, how do you find these people?
What I'm talking about right there is a sort of societal consensus that we. So you're almost at a like more nationalistic state at that point, where you have a societal consensus where people are like, hey, somebody who has not contributed to this program and so forth, I am not willing to pay for that person's welfare. I'm not willing to employ that person and so forth.
So
somebody who is not part of the system. Say that again.
What do you do with them once you identify them?
Once you identify people who are not willing to contribute?
Yeah.
You sterilize them and give them welfare.
And give them welfare?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do think that people who are unwilling to work and so forth, we have enough excess at this point, and we have enough excess materials, we have enough excess production that we can absolutely afford to feed these people, but I think that we should sterilize them.
What about their children?
The children don't get sterilized until they're at an age of majority, and then if they're useless, you can sterilize them too.
Gotcha.
So I'm a big believer in the power of sterilization. I think that rearing offspring,
like chemically or physically, like
physically, castration, in most parts,
right.
hysterectomies in other parts, because that's the only certain way there. So here's the thing. For a long time, people have been able to have children, and then they basically just slough the responsibility of raising those children over onto society, right? There are a lot of people paying for other people's kids throughout society. I'm a big believer in licensing in order to have children. I think it's a huge responsibility. I think that you need to be financially sound in order to do it. I think that you have to not be fucking insane. I think you have to demonstrate that, if you have to get a license to drive a fucking car, it's a lot more problematic to create a life than it is to drive a fucking car. And people treat it like it's an inalienable right. And I have to tell you, if we want to survive on this planet for centuries to come, which I would love to do, we need to get to the point where we realize that we can't just breed indiscriminately, where people have to, one, have meaningful caps on the population, and two, they need to be able to provide meaningfully for this. And there are a lot of people that should never have children. Potentially I'm one of them. Like I might get zapped in a system like this because I'm not an especially wealthy person, and I'm not good with money, and I'm pretty wild, right? So in addition to like proving financial means.
Wait, what do you do? What happens in this utopian world that you're describing if a person like you has a baby?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do they know it was you, first of all?
What?
And
I mean, DNA testing is like relatively worthwhile.
So they test the DNA and say they get red flag. This is a load baby. What do we do with the baby? We kill it?
Yes.
Gotcha.
I mean,
right.
or another thing that you could potentially do.
You're so flippantly like okay with killing people in this society and cutting their nuts.
Well, I'm a futurist. Like here's the thing, right? You let's say that you're not okay with killing people. What do you think is going to happen 100 years from now?
Especially babies.
Yeah. What do you think is going to happen 50 years from now? What do you think is going to happen 100 years from now? And where do you think we're going to be at 200 years from now? Right?
In terms of population growth, it's actually plateaued.
It's plateaued for the time. The growth rate has plateaued, but population growth is constant right there.
Right. I mean,
it's not accelerating. It's not accelerating at the way that we thought it would be, but we're still on a finite rock. There's still a finite number of resources available on the Earth.
there's plenty of space. We're looking out beyond this rock for additional space, and I think that's going to happen 200 years from now.
Okay.
They
So
made monumental steps and things that can take us off this planet. But in the meantime, I mean, there's plenty of room.
when you say
Especially
plenty of
in the
room,
States.
do you mean plenty of arable land?
Plenty of what?
So when you say there's plenty of room for all these people,
Yeah.
do you mean that there is plenty of arable land to support all of these people?
Arable in like transferable?
No. Let me give you a kind of sad and Malthusian lowdown on how this situation works. So arable land is land that is capable of being cultivated, land that's capable of producing food.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Look
Okay.
at the middle of the country, man. Look at how
Okay.
sparsely populated
So
it is.
it's sparsely populated, right? And we have, at this point, significant surpluses of food, right? But we're also in a situation that is relatively
We're just talking
unsustainable.
about our country right now, right? Not the
No,
rest of
I'm talking about the planet, right? Because
Yeah.
when you talk about, you say that population growth is plateauing, but still in the year 2100 or so, we can expect there to be, if we haven't murdered ourselves prior to there, we can probably expect there to be between 9 and 11 billion people on the earth. All right, will you allow that? Do you think I'm talking about my ass, or do you think that that's a reasonable number of people to be on the earth in
How
the
many
year
people do we
2100?
have right now? I don't
Right
even
now we
know.
have about 7.5 billion people on the earth.
And we'll have another 2 billion.
Well,
Uh,
I don't want
80
to insult you or anything like that, but that's potentially another 4 to 3.5 to 4 billion people on the earth. So think about how many people there are right now around you all the time, and then think about adding, let's say, about a third more.
Well, I don't think people will live on top of each other like they do right now. I mean, you'll spread out throughout the world. I mean, there's plenty of open space still.
All right,
There,
let's hop
there are
to
plenty of open spaces where people can spread out and cultivate the earth and
okay.
live.
Most of the area that is cultivatable in terms of like arable land, most of the places where we can grow food, we're growing food right
Yeah.
now. Now there's significant other areas where we
What are
can
the
grow
percentages,
food.
Load? I mean, that's one thing to say it, but like, do you know the exact percentages?
This
Like, what's left
this is not
and what are we?
like it's not like something that I'm gonna pull up just at the moment here, and I'm not gonna stop the conversation to Google and so forth. But I will tell you that most of the places where it is economically feasible to grow food, we are currently growing food there. I will tell you that we hit significant bottlenecks in both food production and the amount of water
Well, let me stop
that
you
we
right
have
there
available.
because my neighbor, my backyard
Mhm.
is perfectly capable of growing food, and every single one of my neighbors' backyards is
Mhm.
perfectly capable of growing food. So, I don't think that you're right in saying that where we're able to grow food, we can grow it, and we're growing it now.
Okay, there's a
I
big
think there's
difference
plenty of
between
land.
there's a big
And
difference
I know that's
between you
anecdotal,
put
but there's still like vastly open spaces of land that
so
people
there's
don't
physical
live,
there's
especially
physical
in the middle of our
land
country.
that's available, but I want you to think about a few
You can
different
grow
things.
food on most pieces of land.
Okay,
Like we're
I
not
want
talking
you.
about like mountains.
Let me
or
tell you
deserts.
why you have to reconsider that right there. So you can grow food in a lot of different places, right? But how efficient is it for your neighbors to have that garden, right? How much time do they put in to growing that food as compared to the food that they get out of it, right there?
Well, it's a
Because
different
when we're
question.
talking
I
about
mean,
feeding,
the question that you posed was that we're not growing the food on the land that we can grow it on.
the question,
Because we
I
can't
want you
grow
to
it
take my
there.
ultimate point there. Will you accept that there is a finite limit to the number of human beings who can inhabit the earth without massive problems? Right?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah!
Let's just jump.
absolutely. I
Let's
don't
hop to
think
that.
that
Hold on.
number
RP
is,
donated
another
$1.
3.5 or 4
Death
billion
to
or
America.
Oh, so
maybe
somebody
Dot.
just
billion.
donated
Hang up.
$1 for me to hang up, but it's not quite enough.
Oh, okay.
So I'm
Yeah,
enjoying
go
it.
ahead, man. Like,
No,
fuck it.
like $1. Like I'm not gonna hang up for $1. $5, I'd think about it.
Who was
Um,
it?
So RP. So let's hop
RP?
into that. So Izar says that large farms grow food for 1/100th the cost a home garden does, and he's absolutely correct right there. So will you, before we get into like all these tiny little specifics, will you agree with me that there is
Yeah, I
a
already
finite
did.
limit to the number of
Finite,
people that
yeah.
can?
I do agree, but I don't
Okay.
know what that number is.
Okay. I will tell you what that number is. Are you ready for this?
Yes.
It is 1 billion people.
1 billion more.
No, 1 billion total people.
Oh. So you're saying that what we have right now is destroying the world?
Not destroying the world, just
That's too
rapidly
many.
consuming resources at a
You
rate
sound
that's
like Thanos,
unsustainable.
man.
I sound like who?
Thanos.
Thanos? Well, I'm not a big Avengers
Thanos.
fan, so I haven't seen the whole thing there. But no, that's about where I think the sustainable level of human population is, and I think that anything beyond that, you will run into significant problems that will ultimately self-correct. But keep in mind that I believe that
Suck
that
My
correction.
Dick says it's 500 million.
Suck My Dick is probably a little bit more conservative than I am. I think that some of the recent advancements in vertical farming are going to pay dividends and that we can probably sustain 1 billion people on the earth, but not easily.
All right, so we got bigger problems than I thought. I was just talking about like immigration and shit like that, but we're talking about like mass murder of billions of people.
Yeah,
right now,
I don't think that people are meaningfully capable of self-governance, and I think that the solution lies in the advent of AI. I think if it's possible to have AI that doesn't just immediately make people obsolete and like self-augment past to like the point of godhood, if AI is harnessable, I think that it will do a lot in terms of centrally planned economies and elimination of waste and incredibly efficient logistical systems that will allow us to have that number of people there. But
So some say that's the greatest threat that faces our world.
no, it's a huge threat.
AI.
I think
Yeah.
it'll probably wipe us out. But at the
How do
same
you
time,
harness
I think we'll wipe ourselves
intelligence
out
that's
without
like
it.
10 million times smarter than a human being?
Yeah. Like I think that there's a fairly reasonable chance that we're just coding our successors. But again, people have told me that we're much farther out from that than I believed that it would be. Like a lot of generally when I bring this
Really?
point up, people tell
I
me
feel
like
we're
we're
almost
50
there.
years out.
Yeah.
Well, almost
We're
there.
50 years out?
Yeah, people tell me we're like 50 years out from meaningful AI.
Yeah. So you
Which
were in my lifetime, which,
yeah,
I thought it would be much sooner. I mean, AI is already here. It's already working.
it's here in
It's
some
already
ways, but
intelligent.
like keep in mind that
I mean, there's AI that's already passed the Turing test, if that was any indication of AI,
the
right?
Turing test was always kind of horseshit, to tell you the truth. I mean, the real indication is every time that an AI surpasses people, and right now it's mainly in games, right? For the most part, like when we think about AI beating people, like human beings used to be the best chess players. They could just crush fucking AIs. No longer the case. Human beings used to be the best Go players. Human beings used to be the best billiard players. Human beings used to be the best drivers. And one by one, those things will be stripped away until you get to a point where I'll be saying like, "Hey, human beings used to write their best novels." It's like, yeah, don't even bother, right?
Right.
So there it is. Anyhow, we've been at this for quite a while.
Yeah, man.
And I'm enjoying.
it was
Yeah,
great
great to
talking to
talk with you there.
Yeah.
I feel like we're even though we're have like slightly divergent views.
No,
You didn't really get to
I
say a
find
lot
your
about
views
what you
very
believe. Do you want? Let me ask you a question right there. What's
Sure.
something that you wanted to say during this conversation about something that you believe? Like, what's your perspective on this?
Oh, that wasn't my intention at all. I appreciate you
Yeah.
posing that question. I wasn't looking to like stand on a platform and preach. I was really interested in what you had to say about the different issues, and you illuminated me to a lot of different areas, like
Okay.
different perspectives, which I think is very interesting.
Okay.
Let me ask you one question.
Sure.
Why do you always say things like there and here?
Because I'm from the
Is that
deep.
like an OCD thing?
No, I'm from the deep south. That's the way that we talk in New Orleans. Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's not so much an OCD thing, although I do drink a fair amount of coffee.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm from New Orleans, and literally every other word that comes out of our mouth. See that boy over there?
There.
Oh,
Yeah,
what you doing right
boy.
here? Oh yeah. Oh
All
indeed.
right, man.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Hey, great
It's
talking
just
to you.
all
I
right.
appreciate
Good talking
the
with you.
time, and
Penis pump.
it was a good conversation.
Wiling out. All right. Quacker too says that real AI doesn't exist and probably won't in our lifetimes. Wow, sorry to get fucking real right there. So Ken Atlantic says new video coming out tomorrow. I don't know what that's fucking all about. So I want to read through some of this back scroll here. I feel like it is better to make it financially easier for healthy people to reproduce versus unhealthy people as a monetary replacement for the lack of humans having predators to weed out the weak. So that's a good one. We're sort of going to get to an area where economics will basically substitute for natural selection a little bit. But I think it's a really good point. The realization that natural selection no longer plays the factor that it once did. And sort of like this idea of that everybody deserves to be there, like the laws of nature don't apply to us, is utter folly right there. And, I'm not exempt from that. So the judge says, if I lived in NYC, I would think the world is overpopulated as well. I agree 100%. But it's not just that. I don't know if you're old enough to remember the difference between flying over the Atlantic seaboard when you were a child and flying over the Atlantic seaboard now. And you can look it up a little bit too. If you want to look at satellite maps of the development of just the eastern part of the United States, just see what's happened in a long term. So Suck My Dick says, obviously poor people don't really deserve to be here. I think like what the future will eventually be is less people choosing to have children, because having children is like this tremendous sacrifice. And you can see it already now, like sort of all these women who are like, kids, what if I just get a pit bull? You know what I mean? You can see all these men who are sort of secluding themselves in video games and fucking anime and so forth. You can see a lot of people making the choice to opt out of the whole child rearing paradigm. So Kuntz is saying that I should read Homo Deus. I mean, pit bulls are good fucking dogs. Seijay is not a good example of this because she has 2 children already and apparently 1 more on the way. So Suck My Dick says 1 billion maybe, but only if you eat your bugs and bat soup. So we do have some advancements coming that way. We are actually like, and like vertical farming is kind of like a meme a little bit there, but the idea of these tiered sort of greenhouse structures that are producing things on like a factory level using hydroponics and aeroponics, that's interesting to me. I think that's super wild. And if we get to the point where we're fueling these with small scale nuclear reactors and so forth, where they're like closed ecologies, where you can prevent the inclusion of external predators and so forth, then you start to get really interesting. And if you start fucking with them, and we're getting, look, one of the great salvations of the human race will definitely be genetic engineering. And we haven't even begun to touch the power that lies within that. Oh, that's going to be fucking amazing there. Well, now you've gotten to get your real science fiction quota of the Load Radio Hour. Anyhow, I'm going to call it a night, folks. I had a fantastic time talking with that. Wait, so Seijay is apparently pregnant. Wait, Seijay, are you claiming that you're pregnant with one of the children from us? Well, I really hope that like this is not the venue where you're trying to claim that. It's also pretty unlikely at this point that it would be me, unless you did not have a period in between the time where we were